The autumn fog had rolled in thick over the riverfront, cloaking the early morning streets of New Larchmont in ghostly white. Harper Ellison stood frozen in the middle of a bustling cafe square, the warmth of her coffee turning cold in her hand. Across the plaza, a man strolled arm in arm with a woman, their laughter muffled by the morning mist. The man wore a navy coat, his salt and pepper hair trimmed neatly, his gait unmistakable. Her husband. Declared dead for over a year. Lucian? She murmured, her voice barely audible. The man turned, laughing, until he saw her. His face drained of color. His steps faltered. Then, grabbing the hand of the woman beside him, he muttered, "You've confused me with someone else," and turned to walk quickly away. But Harper didn't shout. Didn't cry. She took one quiet step forward and said loud enough for only him to hear, "Don't worry. I haven't told the insurance company. Yet." His eyes widened in horror before disappearing into the thick crowd. Harper stood still, her heart hammering in her chest. Her hands trembled, but her mind was racing. Lucian was alive. Not lost at sea. Not drowned in the coastal fog as she'd been told. Not dead. Simply gone, and living another life. Just hours earlier, Harper had arrived in the city of New Larchmont to speak at an academic conference for student support professionals. Her days back in Fairgrove, a sleepy town nestled between rivers and forests, were spent counseling teenagers, supporting her 2 children, and trying, often failing, to move forward after Lucian's sudden disappearance. Her name was Harper Ellison, 46 years old. A widow. Or so she had believed. The official story was clean and tragic, a solo fishing trip gone wrong. Lucian, an avid angler, had taken his boat out just before dawn. The craft was found the next day, shattered against the craggy northern rocks along the bay. His tackle box, wallet, and even his wristwatch were recovered from the wreckage. But not his body. Sometimes the current carries them farther than we expect, the investigator had said gently, voice thick with practiced sympathy. We may never find him. She'd accepted it. Had to. She arranged the memorial. Folded the death certificate into legal files. Held their children, Lila and Toby, through sleepless nights and therapy appointments. And she thanked the stars, in a strange, guilt-soaked way, for the life insurance policy Lucian had kept active. $500,000. Enough to keep their home, to cover college plans, to buy time. Now she realized, it hadn't been love or foresight. It had been strategy. Back in her hotel room, Harper sat in silence, letting the weight of her revelation settle. She opened her laptop and stared at the screen for a long moment before typing, "How to report insurance fraud anonymously." But even that felt premature. She didn't have enough. Not yet. A notification pinged on her screen. It was from an old joint banking account, one she had kept active for utility billing out of habit. The subject line, "Suspicious activity detected." Her stomach dropped. She clicked. There it was, multiple charges in New Larchmont. Restaurant tabs. A boutique hotel. A florist. A subscription to a luxury meal service. All within a 2-mile radius of her current hotel. Harper swallowed hard. He was nearby. And worse, he'd been living this second life not just for a few weeks, but long enough to be careless with their old account. Did he not know she could still access it? Or did he think she'd stopped looking? With shaky fingers, she called the card provider and confirmed the details. The representative confirmed usage spanning 3 months, charges in cities across the coast, New Larchmont, Brighton Cove, even one charge in Fairgrove just weeks earlier. He hadn't just faked his death. He had checked in. And then kept going. After the call, Harper sat staring at her reflection in the mirror. The woman who looked back at her had aged 10 years in the past one. The silver near her temples, the tiredness beneath her eyes, the strength behind them, none of it had been for nothing. But it had all been built on a lie. Lucian had taken more than money. He had taken trust, identity, truth. Her phone buzzed again. This time a reminder from her calendar, life insurance annual review, 10 a.m. tomorrow. The irony punched her in the gut. Tomorrow marked exactly 1 year since the payout had been issued. Was that why Lucian was in New Larchmont now? Was he planning to vanish again? Maybe with a new woman? Harper pictured her, tall, brunette, stylish. Younger, maybe. Or just unsuspecting. Harper stood and began to pace. She thought about the funeral. About Lila's tears, Toby's anger, the family therapist who said closure would come with time. And she realized, there had never been any closure to begin with. Only a cruel pause between betrayals. No more. She needed proof. Real proof. She grabbed her laptop and searched for private investigators in the city. One stood out: experienced, discreet, highly rated. Harper called. The voice on the other end was calm and professional. Verity Investigations, this is Lane. I need help tracking someone, Harper said. I believe he's living under a false identity. And I believe he faked his own death. There was a pause. I've heard stranger, Lane replied. Send me everything you've got. Photo, location, last known details. Harper uploaded Lucian's last professional photo, along with the hotel name from the recent charges. Lane replied minutes later, starting tonight. Harper didn't sleep. She sat by the window, watching the city lights flicker between breaks in the fog. She felt like someone standing at the edge of an avalanche, helpless to stop it, but no longer willing to run. At 11:52 p.m., her phone buzzed again. Lane, target confirmed. Hotel entrance. With companion. Sending photos. Harper opened the images. There he was. Lucian. Laughing. Arm draped over the woman's shoulder. Her husband. Her ghost. Alive and unrepentant. Something inside her broke, then reformed. No more mourning. No more wondering. Now it was her turn. Morning broke with pale light cutting through the fog. Harper Ellison hadn't slept. She sat at the edge of the hotel bed, her coffee untouched. The image of Lucian's arm draped around another woman burned into her mind. There was no room left for denial now. He was alive. Thriving. Living freely under a false identity while she and the kids pieced together a life shattered by his supposed death. But now, Harper had more than grief. She had a plan. The private investigator, Lane, texted again just after sunrise. He's registered at the Riverton Hotel under the name Marcus Leland. Checkout is scheduled for 3 days from now. I've trailed him to a second location, a rented flat near the financial district. Working there under the same alias. Marcus Leland. It sounded like a name you'd hear in a courtroom drama. Harper nearly laughed at the absurdity of it. A year ago, Lucian Ellison had been a respected marketing consultant and beloved father in Fairgrove. Now he was a ghost playing dress-up with someone else's life. She texted Lane back. Do we have photos? A moment later, 4 high-resolution images came through. Lucian, dressed sharply, carrying a leather briefcase, walking out of a downtown office building with a to-go espresso and a casual smile. Another photo, him unlocking the door to a modest brick apartment. A third, him dining al fresco with the same woman from the plaza, laughing, holding her hand, kissing her cheek. There was no remorse. No sign of looking over his shoulder. Harper scrolled through the images slowly, letting each one press into her memory. His new life was real. Tangible. And she wasn't going to let it stay that way. But first, she needed leverage. Real, legal leverage. She called Lane. I need more than just sightings. I need documentation. Employment records. Proof he's using a false identity. And evidence he's benefiting from the insurance payout he never deserved. Already started digging, Lane said confidently. I've got a contact at the Department of State. We're running Marcus Leland through the system. If he forged any federal IDs, we'll know soon. Good. What about financials? Can you trace where the life insurance money went? That'll take more time, Lane admitted. If he transferred anything before vanishing, we'll need subpoenas to uncover the paper trail. But we can find out what he has been spending recently. Harper thanked her and hung up. Then she opened her old notebooks, still filled with receipts, bank records, and insurance paperwork from the months after Lucian's disappearance. At the time, she had cataloged everything meticulously, desperate to maintain order. Now, that obsessiveness would pay off. She flipped through records. The life insurance policy had paid out $500,000, a lump sum deposited into her account. She had used it responsibly, paying off the house, clearing their debts, starting college funds for Lila and Toby. She could account for every cent. She wasn't the criminal. He was. Still, the moral weight pressed heavily on her shoulders. What if some of the money had technically gone to Lucian before she even knew he was alive? What if he used her grief to fund his escape? As her thoughts spiraled, Lane texted again. He's making daily withdrawals from an account tied to a shell company called Leland and Company. I'll dig into ownership. Harper replied with a simple, keep going. Then, she opened her laptop and wrote an email to her lawyer back in Fairgrove, simply titled, Urgent, Legal Guidance Needed. She briefly outlined the situation: Lucian's fake death, the fraud, the insurance policy, and the new identity. Her lawyer, Jonah, responded in less than 30 minutes. "This is serious. You're looking at multiple felony charges on his part. You'll need legal representation in the state where he's currently residing. Want me to reach out to someone in New Larchmont?" "Please," Harper wrote back. Then added, "and find someone who specializes in fraud and identity theft." She paused after sending the email, her fingers trembling. The weight of what she was about to unleash hit her in full. Lucian would face prison. Their children would learn the truth, that their father hadn't drowned in a tragic accident, but had chosen to abandon them. They had built shrines in his memory, lit candles, held hands during anniversaries. And now they would have to bury him all over again, only this time, the man was alive. Harper clutched a photo from her wallet, one of the few she'd kept close all year. It was taken 2 summers ago, at a lakeside cabin. Lucian was grinning with Lila on his shoulders and Toby splashing beside them. They looked like the perfect family. Was it already a lie then? A part of her wanted to throw the photo away. Another part tucked it back into her wallet. She wasn't ready to let the past go just yet. But she was ready to confront it. That afternoon, Lane confirmed Lucian, Marcus, had dinner reservations at an upscale restaurant that evening with his companion. The same woman from the cafe. Her name, Lane discovered, was Ava Lindholm, a freelance interior designer who had been listed as co-signer on Lucian's apartment lease. They were serious. Building a life. The final straw. Harper stood before the mirror in her hotel room that evening, wearing a fitted navy dress Lucian had once called mesmerizing. She applied her makeup with care, not to impress, but to remind him what he had lost. Or rather, what he had thrown away. Then she slid her phone into her clutch. Lane would be nearby with her camera equipment and a discreet audio recorder. It was time. She arrived at the restaurant precisely at 7:28 p.m. Through the tall windows, she spotted them already seated, wine glasses in hand, laughing. It was the laugh that stung the most. The same one he used to share with her. She walked in calmly, each step deliberate. As she neared the table, Lucian looked up. The color rained from his face for the second time in 2 days. "Harper," he whispered. "What? How?" She didn't let him finish. "Mind if I join you?" Ava blinked in confusion. "Marcus? Who is this?" Harper smiled tightly as she sat down. "You mean Lucian. His real name is Lucian Ellison. And I'm his wife." Ava's fork dropped. Lucian's eyes darted to the exits. Harper leaned forward. "You left us for dead," she said. "Now it's your turn." The air inside the restaurant shifted the moment Harper sat down. It wasn't loud, there was no yelling, no glass thrown across the table. But something about the way Lucian's posture crumpled and Ava's eyes widened in slow confusion sent a ripple through the quiet luxury of the dining room. Lucian, or Marcus, was pale. His throat bobbed in a hard swallow, his lips parted but offering no words. Across from him, Ava, elegantly dressed in silk with a delicate bracelet hanging from her wrist, looked between them, alarm creeping up her features like a blush turned sour. I don't understand," she stammered. "Marcus. What is she talking about?" Harper folded her napkin carefully across her lap. She was calm, methodical, every movement purposeful. "Let's start from the beginning," she said, turning to Ava. "Your boyfriend here is Lucian Ellison. Until last year, he lived with me in Fairgrove. He was my husband. The father of our 2 children." Ava blinked. "But he told me, he said he'd never been married." Harper gave a sad, knowing smile. "I'm not surprised. He also said he was dead." Lucian shot to his feet. "You're making a scene," he hissed, voice tight with panic. "Sit down, Harper. We can talk, privately." "Oh, I haven't even started making a scene," she replied, her voice calm and steady. "But if you want to talk, let's talk. Right here. You see, I'm not the one lying to everyone in this room." Ava's face had gone completely pale now. She stood slowly, her chair scraping the floor. "Wait. Are you saying he faked his death?" Harper nodded, turning back to Lucian. "Tell her the story, Lucian. About the boat. The storm. The shattered hull. How you left your wallet and watch floating like breadcrumbs in the water so the rescue team would think you'd drowned." Lucian's eyes darted around. Guests nearby had stopped eating, leaning ever so slightly to catch more of the conversation. "Sit down," he growled through clenched teeth. "Now." "No," Harper said. You don't get to control the narrative anymore. Ava backed up, slowly lowering herself back into her seat, though her gaze stayed locked on Lucian. Tell me this isn't true. He didn't answer. I buried an empty casket, Harper said, leaning in. Our children mourned you. Our daughter still keeps a framed picture of you by her bed. Do you have any idea what that kind of grief does to a teenager? Lucian sat down heavily. His shoulders were hunched, his composure broken. You're being dramatic, he muttered. You don't know everything. I know enough, she said. I know you've been using the name Marcus Leland, working at a local firm, living with this woman under a lie. You don't understand, he started. No. I do understand, Harper snapped, voice low and sharp. You ran because you got in over your head. Financial trouble. Illegal investments. And instead of facing the consequences, you vanished and left us to clean up the mess. Ava slowly turned to Lucian, her voice barely a whisper. Is this true? I was trying to protect them, Lucian said. It wasn't just about me. There were people. Bad people. I thought if I stayed, they'd come after Harper. The kids. Liar, Harper said, shaking her head. Veronica, my investigator, dug into everything. You weren't being chased. You weren't in danger. You were guilty. And you ran. Lucian's mouth opened, then closed again. His hands trembled on the table. What about the insurance money? Ava asked. Did you? I never touched it, he snapped, too quickly. Harper lifted an eyebrow. Didn't you? You knew the policy existed. You knew it would help support your family. Did you think to check in? Or did you just assume we'd be fine while you wined and dined your way through another life? Lucian's eyes were wild now, desperate. We can fix this, Harper. If we keep it quiet, maybe I can turn myself in, say it was temporary insanity or... No, she cut him off. You had a year to come back. A year to explain. But you didn't. You built a new life. You moved on while we mourned. The waiter appeared, wide-eyed and hesitant. Is everything okay here? Just a long overdue family reunion, Harper replied, her tone biting. We'll be done soon. The waiter disappeared without another word. Lucian's face changed again. The desperation dulled into calculation. It was the look he used when making a deal. When selling a lie. What do you want? He asked, voice low. Money? A cut of what's left? You can have it. Just don't ruin me. Harper laughed once, bitter and hollow. Ruin you? You did that to yourself. You don't have proof. Oh, but I do, she said, slipping her phone from her purse and turning the screen toward him. Lucian stared at it. It was a live text conversation with Veronica. Veronica, audio and video recording clear. Captured full confession. Standing by. The color drained from his face again. You recorded this? He whispered. Harper smiled softly. No, she did. She's here. 3 tables over. She's been recording you since I walked in. Ava gasped. Oh my God. Lucian leaned forward, suddenly sweating. Harper. Please. She stood, gathering her bag. You made your choice, Lucian. Now I'm making mine. What are you going to do? He asked, voice rising. Tell the police? I already did, she replied. Insurance Fraud Division. FBI white-collar crimes. And local law enforcement. They'll be waiting for you long before dessert. Lucian lunged forward, grabbing her wrist. Don't do this. She leaned in close, eyes steely. Goodbye, Lucian. Or Marcus. Or whatever you're pretending to be today. Then, with grace and purpose, she walked out of the restaurant, heels clicking against marble, head held high. Behind her, Lucian sat frozen in a chair that suddenly felt like a cell. The morning air in New Larchmont carried a strange weight, as if the city itself knew something was about to fall apart. Harper stood near the departures entrance of Pinegate Regional Airport, hidden behind a column of potted palms. Her hands were cold despite the rising sun. She wore sunglasses, not because of the light, but to mask the emotion brewing beneath the surface. She didn't need to be here. Not physically. The authorities had it handled. But she needed to see it, needed to watch Lucian's final escape plan crumble in the same way he had crumbled their family. Beside her, Lane, the private investigator, stood calmly sipping coffee from a thermos. They've already got eyes on him, she said, glancing at her phone. He passed through the first checkpoint 15 minutes ago. Flights to Monterrey, Mexico. One way. Harper gave a quiet nod. Of course. Always running. A voice crackled over Lane's earpiece. Target approaching primary checkpoint. Uniforms in place. Ready for intercept. Harper closed her eyes for just a second and exhaled. When she opened them, there he was. Lucian. Or Marcus, as his boarding pass would claim. Dressed in casual travel wear, rolling a designer duffel and wearing the exact same jacket he wore in the restaurant just 2 nights ago. A duffel packed with plans to start over, no doubt. Again. He didn't see her. His focus was fixed on the gate ahead, like a man who still believed in his ability to disappear. Then came the moment. 2 uniformed agents stepped into view, their posture casual but unmistakably precise. Lucian paused. They said his name. Not Marcus. Lucian Ellison. FBI. We need you to come with us. Harper watched his mouth form the word no before they cuffed his wrists. It happened quickly. Cleanly. But the weight of it hit Harper like a silent avalanche. He turned, panic etched into his face. That same face she once kissed goodnight. That same voice she once trusted with her future. Lucian's eyes swept the terminal, until he saw her. His face collapsed. Harper didn't move. Didn't blink. Didn't smile. She only watched. As they led him away through the terminal, passengers looked up from their phones and coffee cups. Some whispered. Others stared. But Lucian had no disguise left. He was just a man undone by his own cowardice. Lane turned toward her. It's done. No, Harper said softly. It's beginning. Later that afternoon, Harper met with Assistant U.S. Attorney Michael Vargas at the local courthouse. With the recordings, documents, and evidence collected by Lane, the case had rapidly escalated. Vargas assured her it was more than enough for a full federal indictment. Your husband, he said, flipping through a file, committed a layered fraud. Faking death. Insurance fraud. Identity theft. Likely bank fraud, too, depending on how his accounts were set up. If the Ponzi scheme connection pans out, he could face a second round of charges. Harper sat quietly, hands clasped in her lap. What happens to the money? Vargas looked at her carefully. The payout was issued to you under false pretenses, but you weren't involved in the fraud. The company will likely freeze any remaining funds while they investigate. But the portion used for legitimate needs? Mortgage, tuition funds? That's unlikely to be reclaimed. You acted in good faith. She nodded, slowly. And my children? When will they? That's up to you, he said gently. There's no easy way to tell them something like this. But they deserve the truth. That night, Harper boarded a late train back to Fairgrove. Lane had offered to accompany her, but she declined. She needed solitude. Clarity. She spent the entire ride staring out at the blur of trees and lights, mentally rehearsing the conversation she would have with Lila and Toby. How do you tell your children that their grief was a lie? That their father didn't drown, but simply walked away? The next evening, she gathered them in the living room. The therapist she'd worked with after Lucian's death sat quietly nearby, as a supportive presence, not an intruder. Lila clutched her mother's hand tightly. Toby sat with his arms crossed, defensive, sensing something was wrong before a word was spoken. And then Harper began. She told them gently, slowly, about the Plaza sighting. The investigation. The truth about Marcus Leland. About Lucian's arrest. Lila's tears came first, silent and stunned. Toby's face turned red with disbelief. He let us believe he was dead? He said. He watched us suffer and just left. Harper held them both. There was no sugarcoating. No softening. Just truth. That night, after the children had gone to bed, Harper stayed awake listening to the wind push against the windows. Her body was exhausted, but her mind churned. She didn't feel victorious. She felt hollow. But beneath that hollowness, something new was forming. The beginning of restoration. Not the naive hope of returning to how things were, but the understanding that what had broken could be rebuilt differently. Stronger. In the weeks that followed, the legal process moved quickly. Lucian's trial was scheduled for the coming months. He had pled guilty to several charges in exchange for a reduced sentence. Still, he faced 8 years in federal prison, along with restitution to the insurance company and several counts of fraud under multiple aliases. Harper returned to work at the high school, though she took a partial leave to focus on the kids. The story had spread quickly in Fairgrove, but the community stood with her. Neighbors brought meals. Teachers covered her counseling hours. Her principal hugged her in the hallway and said, "You didn't deserve any of this, Harper. But I've never seen someone face down the impossible like you have." One afternoon, she received a handwritten letter from Lucian. She read it once. Then again. In it, he claimed to be sorry. That he loved the children. That he'd made mistakes. He didn't ask for forgiveness, but hinted at it, weaving just enough humility into his words to plant the seed. Harper folded the letter carefully and placed it into a drawer. Then locked it. She had her answers now. The how. The what. Even the who. But the why? That was Lucian's to carry. She was done carrying his guilt. 6 weeks later, Harper stood in the garden of their home as the spring flowers began to bloom. Lila was sketching quietly on the patio. Toby was building a birdhouse for a school project. Life, raw and real, was still happening. Her phone buzzed. Lane. Insurance case resolved. You're cleared. Company will not pursue return of legitimate expenses. Consider it closed. Harper smiled. Not in celebration. In release. 1 year after she saw her supposedly dead husband walking hand in hand with another woman in a city plaza, Harper Ellison stood in the kitchen of her home in Fairgrove, humming softly as morning sunlight poured across the counter. A kettle whistled on the stove, and a stack of college brochures sat on the table next to a half-eaten muffin and a mug labeled Grief Counselor, because superheroes don't wear capes. Life had resumed its rhythm, but it wasn't the same rhythm as before. It was better. Different. Deliberate. Her son Toby, now 17, entered the kitchen groggily, his hair sticking up in several directions. You're up early. Harper smirked. So are you. Had to finish my psych reading. We're starting trauma theory this week. He poured himself a cup of coffee. You know. I think I want to go into counseling. Harper blinked, surprised, but then smiled. You'd be amazing at that. He nodded, sipping slowly. Yeah. I think I'd be good at helping people find their way through hard stuff. Hard stuff. That's what they called it now. Not betrayal. Not abandonment. Not even the day they learned their father had faked his death. Just hard stuff. Lila, now 15, had taken her own path through the fire. She'd become a quiet but passionate speaker, giving a presentation at her school just 2 weeks ago during Fraud Awareness Week. She had stood on stage and said, "Sometimes the people we trust most lie to us. That doesn't mean we're broken. It means we get to decide what comes next." Harper had cried quietly in the back of the auditorium. Now, months after the dust had settled, the legal battles were mostly over. The insurance company had officially closed its investigation and released a final statement. Harper would retain the funds already spent on their home and children's education, recognizing that she had acted in good faith and been unaware of the fraud. As for Lucian, he was serving an 8-year sentence in a federal penitentiary outside Reno. He wrote every month. Letters Harper sometimes read, sometimes didn't. Always sealed, always stacked neatly in a drawer she rarely opened. He never asked to speak to the kids. And she never offered. The last time she saw him had been in court, where he stood hunched and pale, his once practiced charm reduced to stammered apologies and paper-thin remorse. He had turned toward her in the gallery, offered words of regret. But she had given him nothing in return. No smile. No forgiveness. Only silence. It was the cleanest goodbye she could give. In her career as a school counselor, Harper had always taught her students that healing isn't a race, it's a series of choices. Some days you move forward. Some days you stand still. And some days, you climb out of a crater you didn't dig and plant something new. Now she lived that truth. Today was her first day back at full-time work, and instead of dread, she felt calm. She pulled on her coat, grabbed her folder, and kissed Toby's head. "Wish me a luck." "You don't need it," he said. "You're unstoppable." She smiled and stepped into the spring air, the town of Fairgrove just waking up around her. Later that day, Harper sat with a new student, quiet, withdrawn, eyes tired in a way only someone who's seen too much too young could carry. "My mom says it's okay if I'm still angry," the girl said, barely above a whisper. "But I don't know if I'm more angry or sad." Harper nodded, her voice gentle. "That's okay. Sometimes we feel both. Sometimes we feel nothing for a while. What matters is that you're talking about it." The girl hesitated, then asked, "Did anything bad ever happen to you?" Harper paused. For a long moment, she considered giving a polished, professional answer. But instead, she said, "Yes. Something very hard. But I learned I could survive it. And so can you." The girl didn't say anything at first. Then, "Thank you." And in that tiny exchange, Harper felt a spark of something deeper than peace, purpose. That weekend, She and the kids hosted a backyard dinner. Just close friends and neighbors. String lights hung between the trees, and Toby grilled while Lila organized a trivia game. There was laughter. Music. The clinking of glasses and the smell of grilled peaches and rosemary chicken. At one point, Harper stood quietly near the garden, watching her children. Lila was animated, telling a joke. Toby had just won a debate over which movie trilogy was best. They were okay. More than okay. They were thriving. Veronica Lane, the private investigator who had helped unravel Lucian's fraud, stopped by later in the evening with her partner. Harper greeted her with a hug. "Any regrets?" Veronica asked softly. Harper looked out at the backyard, the glow of the string lights, the sound of her children's laughter, the warmth of a life reclaimed. "Not one," she replied. "You ever think about writing it all down?" Veronica asked. "Your story. People would read it. Learn from it." "Maybe," Harper said. "Or maybe I'll just live it." Veronica smiled. "That's the better ending anyway." As the stars emerged and the party dwindled, Harper lingered outside alone for a while. She looked up at the night sky, remembering another night almost exactly 1 year ago when she had stared out of a hotel window, trying to understand how the man she loved could have disappeared from her life. Now, she no longer needed the answer. Because the better question had become, what do I build now that he is gone? And the answer was right in front of her. A home filled with laughter. Children who knew they were loved. A career that allowed her to give others the strength she had to find on her own. Lucian Ellison might have tried to erase himself from their lives. But Harper had rewritten the ending. And in her version, the ghost stayed buried, and the survivors lived.